Welcome to our Legal Automation webinar series, which is sponsored by Black Hills IP. Black Hills IP is a US-based IP docketing and paralegal service provider that focuses on using technology and automation to provide the highest level of quality available today. For this webinar series, we're bringing together experts to talk about how automation, artificial intelligence, and expert systems are being used in the legal field. The Legal Automation webinar series is free. This is one of several monthly webinars in this series. The schedule and registration for upcoming webinars is listed on our website. So to register for future webinars, you can go to the Educational Resources tab of the Black Hills IP website, which is www.blackhillsip.com. The webinar that we're presenting today will focus specifically on document automation. We've allowed time for questions at the end of the webinar. Questions can be submitted through the question box on the control panel that should be on the right-hand side of your browser window. You can submit a question at any time during the presentation, but that question will be held in a queue until the end of the presentation. Our presenters today are myself, Tom Marlowe, Jim Billmeyer, and Dave Billmeyer. I'm Ann McCracken. I'm the president of Black Hills IP. I'm a patent attorney with 21 years experience in patent prosecution. I was a partner at the Schwegman Lundberg Wissner firm for 10 years, and I was also a full-time law professor at Franklin Pierce Law Center in Concord, New Hampshire, which is now part of the University of New Hampshire. Tom, can you tell the audience about your background?
Sure, thanks. So I started out prosecuting patents, also with the Schwegman firm, moved in-house, ran the IP department with Fairchild Semiconductor for a number of years, and then recently, or relatively recently, joined with Black Hills IP and now serve as the Chief Technology Officer.
Great, thanks, Tom. Jim and Dave, can you tell us about yourselves?
Yeah, this is Jim Billmeyer. My background is all in building software companies and software organizations, but also as an inventor. One of the companies that I built as a co-founder, along with Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen, we built 400 patents in about a 2.5-year period, which is a lot for an early stage company. And as a result of that, I ran a patent organization inside the company as one of my organizations, as well as outside counsel. And I was also vice chairman of the Interval Research Organization down in Palo Alto, California, that had built a very large patent portfolio. So I've become very familiar with that process. And 5-6 years ago, with my co-founder, who is a patent attorney, Charles Muirho, decided to form a company to help use artificial intelligence to accelerate and reduce the cost of making patent documents and the other processes around that. Dave?
Yeah, I've been involved in product and marketing programs at various companies, from small startups to major corporations, mostly handling software product management for a lot of those.
Great. Well, Jim and Dave, thank you very much for joining Tom and I today and talking about the tools that you guys have at TurboPatent. We're really excited to hear your presentation. So before we jump into the nuts and bolts of this webinar, I just want to give a little bit more information about this new webinar series that we're launching on legal automation, artificial intelligence, and expert systems. The other topics that we'll be covering over the next few months include a webinar specifically on expert systems, one on document proofing, one on transaction management, one on legal research AI tools, one on machine-assisted due diligence, and one on document and contract analysis. So we're covering a lot of different areas just to help raise awareness of what is out there and you know, what others may be doing and some of the tools that are available. For today's program, as I said, we're focused on document automation. Document automation is, you can think of it as the design of systems and workflows that assist in the creation of electronic documents. These include logic-based systems that use segments of pre-existing text and/or data to assemble a new document. This process is becoming increasingly more used with certain industries to assemble legal documents, contracts, and letters. Document automation systems can also be used to automate conditional text, variable text, and data contained within sets of documents. So there's quite a bit of complexity and technology just within what used to be a quite simple process to merge a document. For our program today, we'll first go through an introduction to document automation. Then we'll look at some examples of document automation in actual practice that Dave and Jim will provide from TurboPatent. And finally, we'll talk a little bit about the future potential for document automation. Sorry, I skipped one. Okay, so starting out with an introduction to document automation. Traditionally, document automation, or I'm sorry, the creation of documents or the generation of documents was a core function for the junior associates in law firms or the paralegals in law firms. Many of the old, oh, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I was gonna just add, you know, a lot of times the document automation kind of comes down to, for many law firms, simply grabbing an old Word document that was used on the last case, or you know, some exemplary case, and then reusing it, right? I'm sure that's something you've seen in the past. And for what it's worth, it's kind of like a very, very rudimentary form of quote unquote automation, but you know, it's a risky practice, right? When you use something like that that's pre-populated with another matter, or another client, or another case's data, to leave information in there that should have been replaced. I know for me, I've got one that sticks in my mind. Back when I was in law school, I was applying to a number of law firms for internships or clerkships, and I remember I essentially reused a Word document to create cover letters, so that I'd have similar headings and footers and that kind of stuff. But I remember there was this one firm that I was interested in getting a job with, looked like a great firm, but there was a line in there that said I would be really excited to work at, and you can probably guess I didn't have that firm's name in that field. So they were left knowing that I was really excited to work at a competing law firm, and not surprisingly, I didn't land that clerkship.
Well, Tom, that's a great example. Certainly, it can be embarrassing, and sometimes it can be even worse than embarrassing. You could have information for another client in that letter, or just something that just didn't even apply in that context. So the old method of copying a document and reusing it certainly is not a good way to go. But that said, a lot of the older document automation tools were often cumbersome and difficult to use. So even if there was a tool available, sometimes people didn't use it. They still did the copy and edit method that you're describing.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, today corporate legal departments are certainly under increasing pressure to cut costs, and you were in-house. I'm sure you had that experience.
Yeah, this is really true, and especially I came from the semiconductor industry, which is pretty cyclical. So you'll go through a few seasons where things are fine and spending can grow, and then things will dip, and you got to tighten the belt, and which tended to seem to happen more and more frequently, tightening the belt. So there was kind of a continual pressure to reduce the prices, reduce the budget lines for IP spending, which was always a decent sized budget line. But then, at least from my perspective, where we're a publicly traded company, there's an obligation to make sure that you're not overpaying for services. So when other firms can offer similar quality or better quality, um, with using automation with that efficiency and being able to reduce costs, it makes it harder for the other firms to compete. So when I had kind of old guard firms that whose prices weren't able to come down, and new firms that I would test out who were able to provide great quality but at a lower cost, um, it makes it very difficult to stick with the higher cost firms.
Well, and certainly there's similar experiences that I had in private practice with our clients demanding lower prices yet increased quality and the same level of efficiency. So when you look around, whether you're in a corporation or a law firm, it's sometimes surprising to see how quickly the time savings and the cost savings can add up for documents that you prepare on a very routine basis and you prepare in high volume. And people don't realize it, but there's a lot of savings you can gain there by looking towards document automation. So document automation can help attorneys meet many of these new requirements and demands, and also still allow them to maintain hopefully the same level of profitability and efficiency. So what is document automation? Today, document automation has developed well beyond simply merging a document in a tool like Microsoft Word to software that dynamically can draft the content of the document. Document automation can be thought of as machine-guided document preparation or drafting. Essentially, software can present a user with a questionnaire or template that collects relevant data and guides the user through the document creation process. Based on the input provided by the user, the appropriate data and elements of a master template can then automatically be inserted into the instance of that particular document. And then that final document is generated by the system and provided to the user. So very much a machine-guided process.
Yeah, and it reminds me of like your tax preparation software. I'm sure most folks are familiar with that process. But if you think about how complicated that process in those forms can be, and folks like TaxAct and TurboTax have boiled it down to a series of questionnaires. You fill in, the system takes that info, and then at least for legal documents, then builds on what the attorneys put in to get you something that is, well, useful at the end, but didn't require all of the tediousness of the form or the formality.
That's a great comparison, Tom. So why is document automation important? First, as we've already mentioned, law firms are finding it harder to maintain profitability as they're pressured to lower their fees. Corporations are also finding it harder to perform essential functions when they're in a cycle where staffing is cut. Document automation can reduce that non-billable time and other costs, whether it's a law firm or a corporation, that's associated with the document drafting and preparation process. Document automation also, if you think about it, dramatically enhances knowledge management and retention within an organization.
And this point, I think is worth touching on because I think a lot of times automation processes can be very easily written off as simply automating the very basic tasks, and they don't really have much to do with the internal expertise. But when you put the right automation in place around a particular process that you use within a company or within a firm, what's really interesting is now those highly experienced gurus who helped keep the process going previously are not as necessary for that particular task. Obviously, they still have a tremendous amount of value, but now they can be focused on doing the work rather than training and making sure that the process continues. And so in a way, there is a big piece of kind of knowledge retention in that it helps keep your processes consistent and safe. And those internal processes are sometimes very, very important pieces of the business.
Well, and
I would say
oh, go ahead. Yeah,
I would say a follow-on to this is, and what we see is there's always that individual motivation component. A follow-on to this is that at an individual level, learning how to use the tools, the technology, the services that embrace document automation actually make you as an individual, far more valuable in the organization you're in or organizations you want to go to.
Oh yeah,
that's great advice. Yeah,
that's a really good point, especially these days where the stuff is being used more and more. Having those skills make you an even more valuable employee.
Mm-hmm. And in addition to that, for attorneys, it also lets attorneys spend their time on higher value tasks. So I can't tell you how often I meet solo practitioners who are responding to office actions, and they're creating their own response shells and cutting and pasting the claims in and incorporating the amendments from the previous response. And that's not the best way for the attorney with the higher billing rate to spend their time. The attorney should be spending their time on higher value tasks.
Yeah, I think that might be one of the things that got me out of patent prosecution work full time is all of the tediousness that's involved, and of getting past that allows an attorney, like you said, to focus on that strategic stuff, the stuff where they get to really leverage their specialized knowledge and skill. It doesn't take years at law school and a bunch of experience to figure out how to put a header on a document, right? Mm-hmm. Or how to arrange something so it fits with the formalities of a CFR. But by being able to take all of that off the plate, and I think, like you mentioned, especially for the small firms and solo practitioners, for sure, where they might not have as much of a support staff, something like this would, almost be a necessity in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about some examples of document automation, and there are many, many examples. These are just a few. It's becoming very common for non-disclosure agreements to be generated through some type of automation. Corporate organizational documents, merger and acquisition documents, also your client report out letters, and even patent applications and office action response shells. Dave and Jim, are there other examples that you guys have seen generally, or do you just want to transition into talking about your tools?
I would say, automation and analytics is another thing that just giving you more business intelligence to make decisions around things is also, I would sort of put in that same category that helps make whatever documents you're automating better.
Yeah, I
Great.
like that point.
Well, yeah, I agree. Well, I'm going to turn it over to the two of you now to talk about some of the technology that you guys have developed.
Well, this is Jim. We're going to do a sort of a demonstration for you of a couple of our products. We have a full authoring suite that reduces the amount of time a patent professional would take to actually build an application, but that would be a longer, more detailed, thing that we would have to do. We also have an inventor-facing technology called Invention Hub that allows for the inventor and the attorneys and the paralegals to be more efficient because of the in-band communication and some other things that we do there. So you can see those on our website if you'd like to see. Today, I've asked Dave, our Chief Product Officer, to really demonstrate two products that can be demonstrated, can be learned in minutes. That's one of the things that's very nice, and can also be demonstrated very rapidly and show the benefits. So our thinking is, the way we think, we have this slide up, CAD for the legal industry. We're really a bunch of software developers combined with a bunch of attorneys. So it's that combination that's been able to build this kind of technology. And we sort of look at building these documents as an engineering process. So the assembly of proven components, the automate where you can, but also testing. In software development, you test at each phase of the development of the product to try to eliminate issues and problems. And we think that mentality is a good mentality for the legal industry. So we've built, you'll see in these products, they not only have the ability to automate and reduce the amount of time, but also to do a lot of the work checking itself and make that part of the test before you send something back to the client. So Dave, I'll turn it over to you and let you walk through it.
Next slide. So one of the products we have that is directly in line with the document automation is something we call Smart Shell. This is for that part of the process where you received an office action and you need to respond to it. And what we've built is something that automates. There's a process that goes on in a lot of firms where the documents are assembled and prepared for the attorney to make the actual technical and legal arguments. But there's a lot of just tasks of putting that together and assembling that package for the attorney so that they can formulate strategies. So that all of that still needs to be done, but there's a lot of menial tasks that can be automated away. So if you click the next. So with this product, what we're seeing is that it actually can increase the shell generation productivity by 5x, and I'll show you how we came to that in a moment. This allows you to, we talked about earlier, now some of that menial tasks they can be pushed away, and then the personnel can focus on higher value billable work that can actually help the clients more. Because a lot of this is automated, the classic process of putting this together manually, you talked about this earlier, there's a lot of mistakes that can be introduced, human error, because there's a lot of cutting and pasting going on. That's the standard way of doing this. By automating this, computers are pretty good at picking up the parts that need to be put in, and so that all happens automatically. We also do, one of the things we do is we always like to bring analytics to this. So when you generate the shell, we also generate some other data and a report that will actually help in formulating the response. It provides some ability to formulate strategy of how you're going to formulate this response. Just generally, this is not, this is in use. We have about 30 firms and corporations using this, and they're generating thousands of shell packages a month.
And the simplicity, the secure and easy, if you look at that slide on the right, there's a drop box. You just drop the office action in it, and you'll see it just walks through. Or you can even just type the case number or the patent number in it, and it'll do the same thing. It'll go retrieve everything for you and bring it back.
Next slide. So I mentioned the 5X. The way we came up with that, we performed an A/B test, is what they're called, and we brought in a team of patent paralegals, and we had them do a bunch of cases manually. And then we gave them like a 5-minute training on SmartShell, and then we had them do a bunch of cases through SmartShell. And what we found was that they were able to do 5 shells in the time it took them to do 1 manually. And we actually delivered many more parts that they normally wouldn't have done, just because we can pull all this information together. So they actually got more out of it than they typically would generate in that manual process, and we're able to serve back to the attorney more information to help formulate that response. Click next slide. So, it literally, I can't demo it to you, but if I showed you this, it takes about 2 minutes on average to run through this. As Jim pointed out, you basically input the serial number or application number, or you drop on the office action itself, and it basically steps you through a couple of processes where you're just validating. All the information is pulled on your behalf. It identifies all the issues in the office action, and then it generates the shell into a custom template. So this is where people have different ways of formatting these. We actually can populate the information that's needed into a template that is the one you want to present to your client. So what comes in the package is that shell in that custom template. We also provide, this is the analytics, these examiner statistics. There's all sorts of data in there that might suggest, do I contact the examiner for an interview? What's my best next step? We give you information that helps inform the client of what they may expect out of this. What's the allowance rate? We're on our 3rd office action. The allowance rate on this is pretty low, so it may help inform decision making about what the next step should be. We actually also pull down all in an office action. The examiner may have cited art and reference that as part of the rejection. We pull all that down as reference, and we actually pinpoint, we annotate all the cited art with exactly the reference that the examiner was making. So it really helps the attorney focus in on just the parts that they really need to respond to.
Yeah, this could be a 50 or 100-page document with a paragraph that you have to try to find, and the system finds that and brings it back to you automatically.
And because we're pulling a lot of this information and parsing it from the office action, we can summarize that data in different ways for different use cases. So one of them is we can actually summarize it so that you can send to your client a summary of the issues. And then we also have other forms and data. We provide a report, we call it the Similar Victims Report, that will show you where that same cited art has been used in other cases. And we'll actually pull down documents automatically so that you can review what other attorneys did and what their approach was to get around these rejections.
Another item, Dave, that's not on here is oftentimes we find, probably in 20–25% of cases, especially when they've been transferred from one law firm to another, or the attorney, the prosecutor has left, that the organization doesn't have the claims or doesn't have a Word document of the claims. Our system can actually automatically go out, grab that. We have the best OCR, on the planet for OCRing patent documents and bring you back an OCR sort of Word version of the claims if you don't have those in its native form.
Right.
Next slide. Or did you have it?
No, so I think that's Smart Shell, and so that's one of the tools we have here that we offer. The other one is RoboReview, and this falls a little on the gray area of document automation. It's also an expert system. It's really used in the process of reviewing documents that have been created to make sure that there are no issues present in them. And it also provides some predictive analytics that help speed up the process of figuring out what your strategy may be for, for either responding to an office action or in assembling a draft application. Next slide. So what RoboReview does is you drop on, you either drop on a draft application, so this is pre-filed, you've written a document, in this case you drafted it in Word, Microsoft Word, you can drop it on here, or you have an office action response that you've amended claims, and so you want to analyze that for any potential issues. This automates that review process that often goes on. Typically these things are sent out to colleagues for review, or to staff for technical review, and that can take hours of people's time and also often days of turnaround, calendar time. And so what this does is automate a lot of that process by just analyzing that document and bringing back a review of that. So it will actually generate a summary of potential issues, and it will generate a document that's much like a Word document where humans have reviewed it. And it will actually insert comments using the review feature of Word and just tell you in context. Like I say, it's just as if you'd sent it out to a human for review, and they tell you it tells you where the potential issues are in here. And all of this, along with some predictive analytics, helps inform that strategy. It is looking for quality issues. It reduces all the time and cost. So go to the next slide. Yeah, so I mentioned, so the predictive analytics, we make an art unit prediction where this can help inform the client as well. This is pre-file of an application, so you may want to know what are the chances. You may want to inform the client of what their chances are with this application. We do an assessment looking for possible rejections under Statute 101, where an application may be, the content may be too abstract, and we do some machine learning where we're comparing the language submitted to language that's already been rejected for this issue. So it's using machine learning to put together a training set, and it can bring back on the scale there where you are on that. And if you're down in the red, it's something to pay attention to and address before filing. We also do semantic search, where we're predicting the originality of the idea. We're comparing the submitted language semantically to all the documents in the USPTO to find out where there may be overlap. Next slide. And then the other part are these issues, the 112 issues that are can be creep up into a document. It's looking for, we have 4 bots that are experts in different areas, antecedent basis, whether the claims have adequate support in the specification, whether all the figure references are consistent, and then just basic formalities of, did I put all the numbering in right and all of that. So it checks for all of that. And as I say, you get an overview, but you can see kind of a picture in here. It also pumps back that Word document using that review feature, and the comments are made right in line there to tell you in context where the potential issues are.
Yeah, this is very unique technology that allows us to, there's a test in computer science called the Turing test, and this is, can you determine if it's a man or a person or a machine? And you wouldn't know with this Word document other than it comes back immediately and it's extremely accurate whether a person made these comments in the Word document, because it's just like you're used to getting in a review process.
Next slide. I think that was. Yeah, well, and this just shows you a close-up of that, so I think we covered that. So I think that's RoboReview.
Do you guys have any? I can see obvious uses within a law firm, but do you see any like corporate clients using the tool to review their outside counsel?
Yeah, that happens frequently. Larger organizations are using RoboReview, and usually what happens though is they then just tell their counsel that they don't want to see any documents coming that haven't been reviewed. But yes, that does happen as an outside counsel quality check. A very, very, very large search organization, you can probably guess who that is, does exactly that and does an evaluation of their outside counsel every 6 months. They probably have 10, 12 patent law firms and some individuals, and they stack rank them. And one of the large metrics they use is exactly these kinds of analytics.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds pretty interesting.
Yeah, that is very interesting. And well, thank you for going through both of those tools. The Smart Shell's a great example of what I was talking about earlier. When you think about the number of hours your organization spends per month on response shells and preparation of response shells, and if you think about the fact that with software and document automation, you can do 5 times as many response shells in the amount of time it takes to do one. When you add that up, particularly across larger organizations and large law firms, there's a big savings there very, very quickly. So that's a great example of how document automation can really, really help. The RoboReview tool is pretty cool as well, and that's a good preview for our webinar in 2 weeks, which is focused on expert systems. So thank you for sharing that as well. I wanted you guys to go into that one too, and I appreciate that. I'd like to take a few minutes before we go into questions from the audience with some questions that I have for this group. And the first one is, if you're wanting to implement some type of document automation, it seems like there's 2 ways you could approach it. You could go out and obtain an existing solution like the ones that we just looked at, or if you have a software development team or you have a good contractor, you could build the technology yourself. So I want to pose this to the rest of the panel. Should you use an existing solution or should you build your own technology?
I think there's a third option too, Anne, which is you can work with an outside software provider to basically influence or give them requirements and whatnot. It's been my experience and observation that it's over a long haul very expensive to try to build your own solutions, even if you have a little software team. I've visited a lot of the different law firms, and guess what? They're great law firms, but they're not necessarily great software development organizations. And if you think about a software solution that's shared amongst many firms, it's pretty obvious that the quality is going to be higher and the cost is going to be lower for that same level of quality. And I just see the maintenance bill in software development, usually about somewhere between 1/3 and 1/2 of the cost of building and running an organization is just maintaining what you've already built. And so it becomes a very heavy burden for an organization to build something with sort of technically limited use because it's only going to be within their firm. So my suggestion would be, if you can't find something as an existing software solution that you can map to your workflow, then, potentially work with an outside. We work frequently with outside law firms to make certain that, we're building things that are going to meet the needs rather than have to have them go try to build the software.
Yeah, and I definitely second that point too. Unless you've got some very, very specific custom one-off process that doesn't make sense economically for a software, an existing software provider to be able to kind of formulate around. Working with an existing software solution is going to be more economical.
Okay. Are there certain types of documents that you think work best for document automation?
Yeah, I think, the more structured the document, one of the reasons we sort of focused on patents is because they're very highly structured documents. The MPEP dictates, I think you were referring to some of this, line widths and formatting and all this kind of stuff. And then wherever there's, I would say, structure and then repeatability, there's no reason for somebody in a patent document to define on their own what a central processing unit or what a computer is, right? I mean, you may want to tweak it a little bit, but that's been defined. And so, and yet that's in so many system and software patents. I mean, the same thing is true for mechanical patents and other documents. So I'd say that the repeatability, the structure, those are the candidates for the best use of automation.
Okay. And presumably something that's a higher volume document as far as its usage within the organization to really get the benefit of the automation, I would assume, is another consideration.
Yeah. That's a great point. Yeah.
So who in an organization manages or uses the tools like SmartShell and RoboPatent? Is that the attorney? Is it a paralegal? Is it an admin? What level of employee is needed to run these types of tools?
So in the case of SmartShell, it's and RoboReview, it's often the paralegal. In some cases with RoboReview, it's the supervising attorney who just gives it the first pass and a very deep pass with RoboReview. In the case of our authoring tools that are also document automation tools, that's almost always the patent professional, whether it be a patent agent. And then we have things like Invention Hub that are used in combination with the inventor themselves, the end client in that case. So those seem to be pretty consistent. What we see as highly varied is sort of who introduces the firm and how are the decisions made to do this can be highly varied. But I am seeing more and more law firms having a operations person who is responsible for taking the lead in helping to automate and make more efficient the firm. And that seems to be a growing component of at least reasonably sized law firms.
Well, so I guess the answer is it varies, but the key thing is whoever is using the software, it is freeing up either that person or some other person's time for tasks that are more critical, more complex, higher value type tasks, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So my last question, I'd like some thoughts, if any of you have them, on what do you expect to see in the future as trends or potential in the space of document automation? Any thoughts?
The first trend I see is more adoption, because I think you made a lot of good points around the pressures that can't be solved with just more human beings and whatnot. The between the cost and the time constraints and the size of the data sets that are now needed to be considered, It's it requires some sort of augmentation. By the way, when we use the term AI, we don't usually mean artificial intelligence. We mean augmented intelligence. And back in my early days in building computers, companies that did that, computers were at one point in time designed and built in the brains of people, and then the brains of people were no longer big enough to manage the complexity, and they had to augment that with simulators and lots of other technological tools. I don't see any stop to this. I mean, with our authoring tool or SmartShell, for instance, I think the ability for machines to do more and more of the writing and understanding will continue to increase, but we just don't see it getting to 100%. It's going to be, if we're at 50% now, we see the augmentation maybe getting to a point of 80% or 85%, and you still have to have those human beings, involved for reviewing and the original concept capturing and those kinds of things that are very complex, and humans are very skilled at doing those kinds of things.
Well, and Dave or Jim, one of you made a comment earlier about the fact that the people who become really valuable in an organization are the people who learn how to use these tools in their practice. And I think that's also something that's important as a future trend, because oftentimes when you see a technology come in like this, let's say it's something that a paralegal does to prepare an office action shell, many times people in that role are scared that they're going to lose their job. This is going to replace them. And that's not the case at all. And really, if the people in those roles learn how to use these tools, they become even more valuable to the organization. So I think taking the people that have been doing this stuff manually and getting them to become the experts in using and applying these systems will be very important going forward as well, and will just help them in their value in the organization.
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about most other professions, think of being an architect or a software developer or a mechanical engineer. If you were trying to build a house with a drawing board and a pencil, you would be unemployable, uncompetitive, and that's what's really happening to the law profession now. They really, the kinds of tools and technologies for that intellectual kind of work are now, coming to fruition.
Yeah, I think about the movie Hidden Figures. You ever, that movie where about the space program and the people that were actual computers. They were using people to compute all the algorithms and all that. And it was very error prone and all that. And then they brought in the big computer, the real computer, the IBM, and it was the women in that were formerly computers who moved over and embraced the new technology that actually went on to have great success, rather than getting run over by it. They embraced it.
That's a great example. And the women in that movie, instead of doing the calculations, which is what their job originally was, became the ones that learned how to run the computers that did the calculations. Yeah, exactly. So that's a great example. Well, I want to keep us moving. I do have some questions in the queue. So just let me remind people that if you have questions, you can submit them through the question box on the control panel on your screen. If you have questions about Black Hills IP services, you can certainly contact Jim Brophy, and I'll leave his contact information up. Most of the questions in the queue, I'm not surprised, are about the tools that you guys just demoed. So I'm going to go through a few of them. The first one is with the, I believe this would be with the SmartShell system, how long does it take to prepare an office action response shell?
So the actual process from putting in an application number to having the shell package generated is on average about 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes.
Wow.
We see analytics on this, so we can actually know. Now, there's afterward you open it and you do a little quick review, but the actual process of generating the package is technically it's a couple minutes.
It'd take that long to open up the Word document, copy and paste the claims
Oh,
the new version, and
yeah.
you probably even wouldn't get through updating the claim identifiers in there. So that's impressive. Here's another one. Is the application, so I think again this is talking about Smart Shell, is the application loaded to your software online, or is it all done on the attorney's local network? So this person has concerns focused on protection about confidentiality and security if they're putting something out over the network onto your system. So where does that happen?
So in our authoring tools, it is a desktop application. It is, in the case of Smart Shell and RoboReview, a Amazon service, but Dave can talk about, there is no data transfer or data storage.
Yeah, it's all very secure. So it is a web-based, Smart Shell is a web-based system, but nothing is stored. So information is sent to the server, all encrypted, and then all the data is brought back to the browser, and now locally on the browser, and we expunge. So it's all ephemeral on our server. So when that happens, then we get rid of everything. Security is also, we understand, we've been in, handling IP for many years, and we understand the security concerns there. So we do all we can to make sure that we're not going to put any of that at risk.
I'll also point out with office actions, probably 90 to 95% of the office actions that are processed through our system are public documents. You can go get them on the USPTO. There, in many cases, like 5% of the cases, they haven't been published yet, or the people have kept them private through the entire process. That's a very, very small percentage. So it's, and again, it's used by some of the largest patent law firms who have very high security standards.
Yeah, and in the case of RoboReview, where you may be submitting pre-filed, applications, the same there. The material is processed, and immediately as it's delivered back, all those results are delivered back to your browser. All that information goes away from anywhere else but on the browser.
Yeah.
So it's now all on your local system.
We're talking about microseconds here.
Well, and it's not like web-based software as a service type tools are not, an unprecedented type of system with respect to IP. Many docketing systems, portfolio analytics systems operate that way.
And we should point out, people send pre-file applications over email constantly. I mean, that is a common method of getting, it's probably, that's probably the biggest area of security breach.
Yeah, good point.
I like this question because it highlights an issue that we didn't talk about on the webinar with respect to document automation, and that is, what is the source of the data that you need to access when you're going to be automating a document? And so in this case, it's data that's out publicly available, but in some cases it may not be. And so that's probably another thing that anybody thinking about implementing some type of document automation tools should also take into consideration is, where is the data coming from? Where is it going to be used? How will it be accessed? In case maybe there are situations where there are security issues or confidentiality issues different than the ones you guys have already addressed.
Yeah.
Okay, so a couple more questions. I think you just may have answered this one in the last discussion. Is RoboReview for applications not yet filed, or after filed applications when the office action is received?
It's for both. So it can analyze a pre-file application, and it looks for certain things in there, and it's going to make predictions like ART unit predictions that are more suitable for what you want to know before filing. If you then get an office action response and you write a response to it, you could submit that, and it will do the same sort of checking, because what's happened in the office action response, if you've made changes, amended claims, and those need to be analyzed again. you may have introduced concepts that aren't in the specification, and you want to make sure that you haven't done that. So it will look for those kinds of issues and present those back. It also has a place, by the way, of you can put in a published application number, a published document number, and it'll return that. Let's say you just want to do a review on one of your competitors' applications, or something a law firm has done.
Or a corporation wants to check on how well
Yeah.
his law firm has done. This is what that large search company, does, and several other corporations do in checking the work of their outside counsel.
Yeah, we're often shocked to put in a patented document and find out the kinds of issues that are present in those.
Yeah.
Which causes problems in, downstream of, just because you got a patent doesn't mean it isn't with that issue.
Okay, here's a question here. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, just to be clear, that Robo Review is one product. It just has two different drop zones. One you drop for the pre-filed app, and if it's an office action response, you just drop it in the other drop zone. So it's a single product.
Okay, so here's a question that I like as well. Can your work product be integrated into a document assembly management program, such as DM or iManage?
So
I think they're getting at like workflows and workflow automation. Would be my guess here.
Right. We use internally when we're building, because we have a tech-enabled service that uses our technology, and we have if you're familiar with software, a GitHub equivalent of a repository of all this reusable content, definitions, drawings, pre-done applications in certain areas. And the authoring tool we have is really, really good at merging those documents, keeping everything organized, and then editing from there. So it is possible to connect it.
Well, in fact, Smart Shell and Robo Review are both integrated with an IP management system. One of them right now, Anaqua.
Anaqua.
So, which puts in that's basically an overall workflow management tool for IP management, and it is integrated with that. So the documents, can come out of there right into Smart Shell, and then they can go right back into that system. So we've done that sort of thing. I'm not sure if that addresses all of the question.
And the authoring tool is also integrated into Anaqua. So yes, there is an example of a company that has embraced and made it part of the workflow for those who use Anaqua.
Okay, good. I have a couple of questions, and I wish that I'd included your contact information on the webinar slides, but could you list either your website or how people could contact you if they have more questions about the products or want to see a demo, or I have a question about your fees and pricing for the products? How can people get more information?
TurboPatent.com.
Yeah, well, the website is turbopatent.com. And if they want to just write to info@turbopatent.com with any question, there's several of us that get that and can address that, and that includes if they want to see a demo of the products, we can set that up. So info@turbopatent.com. Okay,
info@turbopatent.com. Or if they just want to go to your website, it's turbopatent.com. All right.
Correct.
Well, we're at the end of our time. I'd just like to remind people about the upcoming webinars. The next one in the legal automation series is the one I mentioned, which focuses on expert systems. That webinar is 2 weeks from today, on August 15th at 1 p.m. Central Time, and you can register for that on our website. Also, if you've been listening to our docketing webinars or are interested in docketing, we're continuing the webinars on docketing issues with respect to trademarks. The next one in that series is a week from today, which is next Wednesday, August 8th at 1 p.m. Central Time. That webinar will focus on transferred portfolios. So the topic is docketing options for managing the transfer of a trademark portfolio. So again, to register for these or other webinars, go to the Educational Resources tab of the Black Hills IP website, and you'll find all of our upcoming webinars listed there. And I'd like to again thank Dave and Jim for joining Tom and I for the program today. We really appreciate the information you shared. And I want to thank our audience for joining us today, and I hope you'll join us for more webinars in the future. Thank you very much.